Welcome to Drunk on Social, the Symposium, where we help you stay ahead of social media trends, share the latest news, and highlight the strategies that are working to help you grow your business. Now let's join our hosts, Tristan and Jeff, in 3, 2, 1.
Are you struggling to set yourself apart in the real estate sea of sameness? Do you struggle to decide where to market, how to market, or what to put into your marketing to help you stand out? It's probably because your brand isn't dialed in. A great brand involves a lot more than a photo, a logo, and a tagline, friends. That's because people don't do business with a logo. They do business with a person. Our friends at BrandFace can help you define, develop, and display your personal brand so you can stand out, outmarket, and outsell your competition. It is time to unveil your inner star. Head to powerbrandtraining.com and check out their free training video. Again, powerbrandtraining.com. That's all one word. powerbrandtraining.com. Check out their free training video. It will be worth your time. Drunk on Social, the Symposium listeners, we appreciate you and wanted to share the wisdom, the absolute fire that was shared at our first live event, Social Genius. We brought in some of the biggest names in social media, and now we're repurposing that content to share it with you on the podcast. In this episode, you will hear from the author of best-selling books, 1 Million Followers and Hook Point, Brendan Kane, on how to find, engage, and grow your social media audience. Enjoy.
Brendan, thanks for being with us. For those of you who don't know you, he's a best-selling author of those 2 books I mentioned, Hook Point, 1 Million Followers in 30 Days. He's an amazing human being. And on top of that, he's a marketing genius. He probably doesn't refer to himself as a genius, but Brendan, you're a pro, bro. And I appreciate you being here. He's helped out people like Taylor Swift and Katie Couric and Rihanna. We'll put up a link to the site. You can take a look at it. And I'm in the middle of hiring him for our companies. So Brendan, just be patient with me. I'm almost there, man. So thanks for being with us. Brendan.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to connect with everybody, and thanks for everybody for joining.
Let's make it happen, bro. I'm going to start off with one question and then we'll go from there.
Sure.
Your latest book, Hook Point, it starts off with you letting us know the importance of why we need to hook people quickly. And what do you think that time is? Is it shortening up? Because Jeff and I are big on TikTok and on Reels. Do you think that 3-second span is shortening to 2 or even 1 second? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think it depends on a number of different variables. I mean, it can be as little as less than a second. It could be 3 seconds. It just really depends the state of mind that the person is in on social media. So how many posts have they just consumed? Did they just get on social media? Have they been on it for 30 minutes? What are they specifically looking for? So when we're looking at that 3-second rule or less, there's a number of different variables that we're taking into consideration with it. And obviously our whole purpose is to just stop the scroll. And in stopping the scroll, or in the case of YouTube, a lot of the traffic comes from suggested video. In that case, it's earning the click. But what we're trying to do is use visual cues to just get them to stop, to say, hey, you should spend a few more seconds with this post to allow us the opportunity to win further attention for you. So I wouldn't think of it as like a super hard rule as 3 seconds. It could be less, in some instances more, but it's really about how you design your message to first just communicate that this is a post that's worth stopping for. And that can come in many different variables. It could be colors, it could be movement, it could be text in the form of a headline or a meme card. So it really all depends. Now, I will say the biggest mistake that people are making in those first 3 seconds is they feel like they need to convey the entire message up front. And that either overwhelms people or it's just you're giving away too much in the beginning that they're like, well, I already know what this is going to say, so I'm going to move on.
All right. So with that, you also have a formula. The last time I interviewed you for the Success podcast, you mentioned that there are these 5 things we need to watch out for, or maybe 6, I don't remember, but I remember 3 specifically. So build off of that. And it was the 3 F's, which you said we need to focus on facts, fun, and feeling. Those were like the main things. What else is part of that? Because you did a lot of research behind exactly the things we need to include when we're creating these videos or content.
Yeah. So how about I set the stage so it kind of provides a little bit more context to that, Perfect. If that'd be cool for you.
Do that, please.
Is it okay if I share my screen for a few minutes?
Definitely, man. Let me know if you can too.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to make you co-host just in case.
Okay, cool. Can you guys see my screen?
I got it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of set the stage to provide a little bit more context to what you're talking about, Tristan. So it provides a little bit more detail. But typically where we see brands failing when it comes to social media is they're using traditional marketing tactics that really don't adjust for the way that the world has shifted around it. They don't adjust for the fact that communication has drastically changed. And the reason it is if we think pre-social media, it's safe to say there's 1 million content creators on the planet that are reaching the masses, because content distribution was heavily regulated. To reach the masses, you had to go through newspapers, magazines, television stations, and radio stations. So it really limited the number of content creators that were operating on that level. So we fast forward to today in 2021, now there's 3.96 billion content creators on the planet. Yes, that's billion with a B. And every single one of them is creating content that's unique and valuable in their own way for the people that mean the most to them. Family members, loved ones, siblings. And like it or not, we are now competing directly with all of them. We're no longer living in a world where we just have to compete with our competition. We have to compete with every piece of content that's created by Kim Kardashian, Gary Vee, who you mentioned, Jimmy Fallon, every teenage influencer and their friends. So it makes it truly difficult to stand out. And it really sucks for brands that are trying to stand out and make waves. And again, we do this all the time with companies that are pre-revenue all the way up to 25 billion a year in revenue. And we find that brands and individuals, oftentimes it feels like they're just starting fire pits and burning money, trying to find the best ways to connect with their core audience. So it's just fascinating to see, because I remember when I first started in this game back in 2005, digital marketing spend was at 12 billion. That was digital marketing, everything included in digital. You fast forward today, social media alone, there's going to be $110 billion spent. So I like to use this analogy. So if we go back to science class, if you want to put something into orbit, you have to reach what is called escape velocity. Otherwise, your satellite, your spaceship, whatever it is, will fall back down to Earth. The same things apply when you're marketing your product in today's world. You have to overcome the billions of competing messages that are sent out into the world every single day. So that's where we have, over the past 16, 17 years of doing this, we found that there's a real physics to delivering a message. So the first part, and what we were just talking about in the first part of this, is grabbing attention. You've got to stop the scroll. You got to earn the click, because without attention, you get lost in the noise. But it's not just about grabbing attention, because the days of clickbait are really over. You have to actually hold that attention. And we could talk about why, because with the algorithms, they're really getting smart to how content needs to be designed to serve their underlying business goals. So attention without substance, as we know, really has no value. I mean, just think about the amount of times that you were tricked into clickbait. You get there and there's nothing relevant. You're like, screw this, I'm out of here. And then also though, we have to monetize that attention. It has to play to our overall business goals, because all the attention in the world really means nothing unless you turn it into some type of KPI that is meaningful for your business. And most of that is through monetization. Now, this process, it isn't easy, but it is pretty simple. Just grab attention, hold attention, and monetize that attention. And that's where real scale comes from in marketing in today's world. So we have Hook Point, which is the core premise of the second book, and it's even talked about in the first one, but we see it as a way of thinking. It's a way of standing out. It's a way of doing business so that you can break through the noise, stand out, and monetize with clarity, intent, and purpose. So just some of the things that we did, and you alluded to some of them. We've used Hook Points to generate over 50 billion plus views and hundreds of millions of followers for our clients, billions in revenue for our entertainment clients, hundreds of millions in e-commerce revenue. So getting down to the question that you have is, there's a blueprint to a successful Hook Point. So there's 3 key pillars that we have. So we have a viral content engineering process that's really designed to grab that attention. But then again, when we talk about holding attention, we have a communication algorithm, and that's what you're talking about, Tristan, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into that in a second. But then we have a lot of business innovation and ideation models that helps us monetize that attention so that you can really capitalize off of this successful marketing. So, and I'm not going to walk through all of these, but just to show you the layer of depth that we go into, and we can talk about each of these deeper, but we really dive into each of these core disciplines in a very detailed way. So let's move into what you were just talking about with those 5 different things. So we find that most brands are often failing with their message because they're connecting with less than 30% of their target audience. So with that, we've really turned marketing communication into math. So as you see here, there's 6 ways that people perceive the world, and it's broken down into percentages. So 30% really perceive the world through feelings and emotions. So they're making decisions on whether they're going to connect with a message, sign up for an email list, buy a product or a service, hire somebody based upon how it makes them feel. Now, 25% is really fact-based. So that's, who, what, when, where, why. They want to know data. They want to know timeframes, information. Does it make sense to them? That is how they're going to make a decision. Now, 20% is fun. These people engage in the world, whether it is exciting, entertaining, fun for them. So they're often reacting to the world. If it's just fact-based or feeling-based, they're out because it just doesn't seem like a fun product to buy or engage with. Now, 10% is values-based. It's all about trust, commitment, dedication, value. 10% is imagination, reflection-based. So they really reflect on the world. If you've ever heard stories about Albert Einstein, his best ideas came because he would stare out in the window for hours on end, taking everything that he's learning in. And then 5% is action-based. So they don't think, they don't feel, they don't believe, they just go. They make it happen. If you've ever seen Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise, in that movie, he is just constantly running. He's just interacting with the world that way. So when we're working with clients, we typically focus on the big 3, feelings, facts, and fun. Because with that, we reach 75% of the population. Now, with this, we're not really changing a client's message. We're just contextualizing it so that each of these different segments can really understand and connect and take action on that message. So that's kind of just a high level kind of overview of how that looks. And we look at communication from a psychology standpoint.
I love this, man. Brendan, I have a question for you since Tristan's muted. When it comes to hooks, so I'm a video guy, right? And to me,
how you lead in your video is so critical. And I know this ties into posts, and I've got this two-part question. You know, we speak to a real estate crowd primarily, and the biggest mistake you always see is the typical, "Hey guys," or, you know, "Hey, it's Jeff here." And I always tell people like that, you're done. That's it. If that's how you let in, you're done. Like they're not going to stick. They're not going to stick with it. They're going to scroll, right? And so as it pertains specifically to video, I want to hear it from you. Like, how do you advise people? So if I say, you know, Brendan, I've got this, I'm going to be standing at a new listing or an open house or whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm talking about, what should I do? Like, how should I lead into my videos? And I would love for you to share with our audience how critical it is for them to lead in correctly versus the typical intro or just happy Wednesday, right? What is your take on this?
Yeah, so there's multiple layers to answering that question, and I really appreciate you bringing it up because it is a huge mistake that people make with their content. First and foremost, like you pointed out, most people misunderstand the purpose of social media. And this is something that I learned from working with Taylor Swift very early on, because she was a master of this. Social media is not a one-to-many platform. Yes, it is not a one-to-many platform. It is a one-to-one platform. When people are consuming social media, they are by themselves. They're on a train on the way to work. They're laying in bed. They're sitting on their couch. It's not that they have thousands of people around them watching it with them in a stadium or a theater. So when you point out those things, hey, everybody, who's everybody? I'm sitting here by myself. And you look at the number one influencers, and it was interesting because when I first started in this industry in like 2004, 2005, there was a Variety had did an article when influencers were on the rise, and they asked young teens who their favorite celebrity was, and it was 7 out of 10 were influencers. It was only like 3 was like Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert Downey Jr. and these people. And you may be like, well, why is that? Well, because these influencers connect on a one-to-one basis. They feel like they are your friends. They feel like you know them. Versus sitting in a movie theater or watching Netflix, it's a very passive experience. Whereas the best influencers, the best content creators make it an active experience. So you've got to cut that part out. Like you said, hey, everybody, who cares? I'm not with everybody. I'm here for me. Or happy Wednesday, who cares? Like I've got 50 other posts I can look at. So the first part is just really understanding in those intros, you have less than 3 seconds. So what is that thing that you can do to just get them to stop and pay attention to what you're saying? And again, that doesn't necessarily have to be verbal. It can be a meme card or a headline. It could even be an action on screen. Like maybe somebody walks onto the screen and does a backflip or does something interesting that sets up for the story. Like you look at, I know D-Rock is going to be on here with Gary Vee. If you go watch his clips, like if he's doing an interview with somebody, they'll cut out the most impactful 3 to 5 second clips that will then introduce what is going into it. We don't have enough time to go into all the different variables of it, but I just want you to know it doesn't have to be verbal. I don't want you to convey too much because you're going to overwhelm the person. In addition, you also have to make sure that you're contextualizing your message so it doesn't come off like people already know what you're going to say. So, for example, people get a little bit too on the nose, and sometimes, and we don't do this all the time, but we talk about subverting expectations, especially with meme cards. Like when meme cards first came out, it worked for everybody because nobody was doing it. Now everybody does it. So you have to reinvent the way that you use it. So for example, if we're creating a video about meditation and you have a meme card that says meditation is the key to stillness or the key to relieving anxiety, like these are things we all know. Now, even though this video may have a unique perspective on it, the minute that individual on the other side of the screen thinks they know what it's going to say, they're moving on. So if you were to subvert expectations, you may say something like, well, meditation is a scam, to stop that scroll. Now, again, holding the attention, your message has to lead up to what you're saying. So if I were to have a meme card that says meditation is a scam, I may start off saying, hey, have you ever felt like meditation just hasn't worked for you? Like you're missing something, you're just not getting it, and it almost feels like a scam? Well, I feel your pain because I was that way too. But I met this Zen Buddhist monk, and he taught me these 3 principles that took me from a non-meditator that didn't believe in it, thought it was a scam, to somebody that now meditates every day for the past 10 years. So let's dive in. Another one, we had a video that went super viral because we subverted expectations that said, don't sweat the small stuff, or it was sweat the small stuff, because it flipped that held-known statement on its head to sweat the small stuff. So we flipped it on its head. There was another one that went viral that said, warning, safety is dangerous. So what we were doing was we were flipping it to stop the scroll, to then dive in to get that attention so that we can dive into the story that we were telling.
Brendan, do you think that the media does that well, like CNN and Fox? Because I feel like when you just said that, I'm like, hold on a second. This is how they hook me every time.
They do. So yes and no. They do it. They're very good at stopping the scroll, earning the click. But what happens is oftentimes they're using the clickbait side of it, and they don't hold the retention, so that they then lose the trust of that person. And thus, if it's any news outlet or publication, then if you start doing that multiple times and you click on that video or you watch that video and then you realize that it's not what they promised to deliver, then you automatically lose that trust. So I see this in YouTube because I get seeded a lot of sports commentary videos, and there's a lot of people that will re-upload content from other sources, and they'll put an amazing hook point or headline, but then you get in the video and it is nothing related. Like they'll say like one sportscaster is going to talk about this, and that person's not even in the video, or they don't even talk about the thing that clicked you in. So yes, they're good at it, but they oftentimes lose a lot of trust and credibility, and then lose audience and that effectiveness as they abuse that.
That makes sense. That's if like we said Brandon Kane was going to show up today and it was just Jeff. I'm just
exactly, which sounds simple, but that happens. You know, it happens more with like re-uploading content than anything, but it does happen.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. So what are some things that, as we have business owners here, whether it's solopreneurs or entrepreneurs listening in, what are some things that they should be paying attention to when they're looking to grow their influence on social media? Where would you say, hey, start here and continue on this path? What would that look like to you?
There's a few different ways to go about it. The first place is understanding why you're doing it. What is the end result that you're hoping to get out of social media? And really benchmark your efforts against that, because there's so many people that will buy like 1 million followers, and they're like, well, I want 1 million followers. I want a bunch of followers. And I'll say, well, why do you want it? And they're like, oh, I want to go live on a beach, or I want to make millions of dollars. But they don't really understand, like, well, how does it translate? Like, how are you going to take an audience and convert it into revenue? What are you going to sell? You know, what are you essentially offering at the end of the day? And I had to rewrite 1 million followers to really clearly delineate that. And oftentimes when we're working with clients, I'll ask that question first. If they come to me and say, I want you to help me generate a bunch of followers. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, I want to generate more leads for my business. I was like, okay, then why do we have to focus on generating followers and then focusing on getting those followers to then convert into paying subscribers or purchasing products? Why don't we just start with selling the product first, build that revenue, build that profit stream, so you have a sustainable business engine that can then support the organic growth, the follower base. And it's really about setting up a sustainable foundation, because this is hard work. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Like, you have to, most people fail at this because they give up, and they give up typically because it's not sustainable. They don't see the revenue. They have to work their day job. They have to find other ways to generate revenue, and then they just give up on it. So that's base level. You have to start. The second place, whether you want to go after organic and paid, is really reference building and analyzing other content creators, other people that are doing what you're doing. So, and I'll go back to sharing my screen. Let me pull up, because I think it's really important, where most people are going wrong with this. It's super interesting, because when we look at science, we leverage centuries of trial, error, and data. Whether we're creating new cures for things, new supplements, new treatments, we use data of years of trial and error. We don't just all of a sudden wake up and say, I'm just going to create a cure for cancer without studying anything else. That would be crazy. There's no way you would have success. And yet, when it comes to content and social media, we're discarding millions of data points and results just so that we can be original. That's what we hear a lot. Well, I want to be original. I want to really be authentic and stand out in a different way. So this is the way that we see most brands and people creating content. So it's really the common sense model. We have brand guidelines. So what our brand represents, tone, color palette, things like that then drives the creative ideation. And then from creative ideation, we go to monthly and quarterly content plans, where people will plan out their content for the next month, the next quarter. They'll produce that content and post it, review the results monthly or quarterly, and then go back to creative ideation. Now, this doesn't work because it's minimizing the impact of data on creative. It doesn't really nurture the opportunistic and agile creative output to really take advantage of what's working now in the algorithms. And it's a completely reactive model. There's really no process in place for accountability. This is really important when you have somebody managing your social accounts for you, iteration, and growth based upon the results that you're getting back in real time. And it's almost just completely dependent on luck. So when people say, well, going viral is luck, it's not. It can be engineered. So this is the viral content engineering model that we've developed, where it really merges creative with the scientific methodology. So research is the first place that you have to start. You have both paid and organic. You have to see, what are other content creators in my niche, in addition to outside of my niche, what are they doing? What's working? What is not working? How can we take those learnings to base and take that data to then create new hypotheses of what content we should create? What formats, what storytelling techniques, what calls to actions? And then through that hypothesis building, then we go into ideation. But this ideation is now driven by the research and the data that we've collected. And then, just as important, single iteration production planning, one piece of content at a time. So that when we post that piece of content where we have a clear hypothesis, then we can review the results, understand whether our hypothesis held true, and then start back all over in the research phase. So that's really where we focus. This foundation is built on research. It's built on what works rather than the creator's affinities. So I just wanted to break that down, because that is like one of the biggest areas that people struggle to have any type of success with social media, is because they're not taking that engineering process to making decisions on what content formats to create, doing one at a time, taking those learnings for the next piece of content and next piece of content.
Well, I think it's also a challenge, Brendan, for most people to approach it this way when they're running a business, because they think, well, it's just social media, right? They don't treat it like a business either. And you just showed, like, there's a lot of deep research that you do that goes behind actually making something like this very successful. And it's a challenge, man. So how is it that you would advise for people listening in to do this? Like, where do they start with the research? Do they go in and take a look at not only the people in their industry, but do they also look where there's an opportunity or the weaknesses? How is it that they can approach this better?
Well, when you say that it's a challenge, I would say it's a challenge to do it the other way, because you're going to burn time and money and get no results from it. And one of the biggest things that we've seen is this is a quality over quantity game. This is not about posting every day. This is not about posting as much as possible, because you're not going to learn in that way. Now, I'm not saying you cannot be successful in that point. You can, if you have a process to follow what I just laid out in research, do the hypothesis building, that creative ideation off of that research, single iteration, production, and then reviewing those results. You can, but most people are they're producing as much content as possible. They're not learning from it, and they're not getting the results that they need. Now, you can start as simply as just focusing on the content you consume. If you go on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, just as a end user, for somebody that's looking for content to be engaged, what content are you seeing that's causing you to stop the scroll? What content is going viral? What content's not? And start studying that and understanding, well, how can I apply this to my strategy? What formats should I focus on? Which formats should I not focus on? So it doesn't have to be a lot of work in the beginning. The most important thing is to just start the process. My creative director and I, still to this day, pretty much every day, we're passing references back and forth. Did you see this? Did you see that? Why did this work? Why did this not work? Going into Facebook ad libraries, studying what other content ads are, how they're being structured. So I would pose that it's more of a challenge to do it the other way, and you're ultimately not going to get the results you're looking for, and you're going to burn yourself out and not maximize the potential versus taking the approach that we've laid out.
All right, Brandon, last question for you, and then I'll let you go. First, thanks, man. You broke it down so well, and people are enjoying this on both ends here on the webinar and on the Facebook groups. So last question here for you. When it comes down to giving an example, and let's just say for real estate agents, because we've got a few on here, when you're telling people, hey, stop the scroll and this is what it would look like, what would that look like in your mind? I'm asking you because I know you've spoken to thousands of real estate agents as well. So any ideas as to how to do that better?
Well, I mean, one reference that comes to mind is Ryan Serhant, looking at his most viral content and how he structures his headlines and thumbnails. And you'll see other real estate agents have picked up on it and have been very successful with it. So one of the biggest principles is making your content digestible for the general audience. Because when we talk about the algorithms are really looking for two things. They're looking, are you stopping the scroll, and are you holding attention? Because the algorithms make money based upon how long you stay on these platforms, because they can seed you more ads. So they are going to prioritize content that holds attention for as long as possible, and then deprioritize content that doesn't. So a huge mistake people make, especially like in real estate, for example, is they're designing their content for a very specific niche audience. And thus, when the algorithm tests pushing that content beyond their audience, they see it falls flat. It doesn't stop the scroll. It doesn't hold attention. So somebody like Ryan Serhant is making his content digestible and interesting for the general audience, but then still playing to his business goals. So that's why he'll go tour a $7 million closet, a $250 million property, even if he is not representing that. Because he knows the general audience, even though they can't afford those things, wants to see what it looks like. So the algorithms see, wow, this content is bringing in a general audience. When we test it, it's holding the attention. So let's push it to as many people as possible. And through that, instead of generating thousands of views, he'll generate millions of views. And then he knows out of those millions of viewers, maybe there's 2 or 3 people that could afford his services, afford the properties that he's representing. And he's even said he has sold 10, 30, $50 million properties through social media because he's using that tactic.
I love that. Jeff, any other questions? I think that's a wrap for Brandon, right? Yeah, I think we're good, Jeff. Plus, we're losing your audio.
Yeah.
Brandon, thanks so much for being on, man. I really appreciate.
We need to have him. We need to have him again,
dude. Brandon, anytime. You know you're welcome, man. We love you. So, thanks for making the time. What time is it in London?
It's about 7 p.m.
Oh, good. We made it before it got really, really dark. So,
yeah.
Thanks, man. And we put up the link there. Where would people be able to reach out to you if they have any questions for you, if they want to take a look at your book or what you have to offer, or even hire you?
I would go to hookpoint.com. So I put the link in the chat there. There's a video that dives into it deeper. You can download that deck that I was walking through. I just walked through a brief section of it. And if they're interested in working with us, they can schedule a call with our team. But that would be the best place to really start.
I love it, man. Thank you so much again for your time. I love what you do. Keep on doing amazing things.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for listening to Drunk on Social, the Symposium. We are here to help you take your business to new levels through social media. Make sure to subscribe to get updates on new episodes and come join us on our Drunk on Social Facebook page. And as always, make sure you leave us a great review on your favorite podcast app. Feedback and likes are very much appreciated.